The bandwidth for this episode of the Power Factor Show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Sponsored by Taylor Freelance, Rainier Ballistics, Hodgdon Powders, and JPL Precision.
Hey Power Factor fans, I'm Rick. Welcome to Power Factor Show. And what I would have liked to have talked to you about, since we're shooting this episode right after Christmas, is the new gun that I got, but I didn't get a gun. The next best thing, I think, is getting some tools to work on your guns. So what I have here is M1 Garand that I've had for about 12 years. And the last time I took it to the range, I had some short stroking on the cycling of the gun. So the bolt was coming back enough to eject a spent round, but not back far enough to pick up a live round and feed it into the chamber. So I would be blang, 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 and then click because there was no round. And there are some troubleshooting you can do to try to figure out what the problem is. And one of the things that came up was rubbing of the operating rod on the stock. And the thing that's interesting to me about the Garand rifle is that it is this, rough and tumble, battle ready. General Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. But when you start looking through publications like this is the Kuhnhausen shop manual, you'll see there's all these detail fitting steps that have to be done in order to ensure that you don't have the operating rod rubbing on the stock or you don't have the gas cylinder out of alignment. And I just was amazed at all of the little detail fitting that might be necessary so that the gun will operate. And my gun is a commercially made Springfield Armory product, not Springfield Armory, U.S. government armory in Springfield, Massachusetts, but Springfield Armory Inc. In Illinois. And it's a commercially made receiver, so it's not a surplus GI receiver. Commercially made receiver with a commercial barrel and an aftermarket commercially made stock, but then a lot of the small components are GI parts. For instance, the drawing number is on the top of the bolt here. It's a Springfield Armory, that's Springfield, Massachusetts bolt. Springfield Armory op rod. It's a GI gas cylinder. So it's an assemblage of GI and commercial parts. And this one was made in about 2002, and Springfield continued to make them. I think they announced at the 2008 SHOT Show that they weren't going to sell them anymore. So I've had the gun for 12 years. I put, at one point, hundreds of rounds through it with no issues, but then I had these short strokes. And so I start looking on the internet for information about, where do I start looking to kind of troubleshoot the issues. And one of the things was the stock. And the stock on this gun is made by Boyd's, which is a commercial stock maker. And if you were to buy a new stock, even from the CMP for your government issue Garand rifle, it would be a Boyd stock. And it's oversized in certain dimensions on the outside, and then also on the inside. And so there's various parts where you need to check for ill fit. There's rubbing, there's binding, So it seems like the one single part that is most likely to cause issues is the rear handguard. And it looks pretty unassuming, it's just a little piece of wood that fits over the top of the barrel. And, what could go wrong with this? Well, it's amazing how much could go wrong with it. And it's attached to the barrel by the rear barrel band, which is a little clip that runs through this groove in the back of the handguard. And then there's little grooves, slots on either side of the barrel, and it just clips to the barrel. And the first thing I noticed when I took the gun apart is that the clip was clipped only on one side, which of course would allow the handguard to rotate a little bit away from the side that wasn't clipped in. And there was evidence that the operating rod was rubbing in here on the handguard. So I'm thinking, okay, that's maybe one of my issues is the op rod is rubbing on the handguard. Well, then I also find that the op rod's rubbing on the stock. So I start looking a little more in depth into this handguard, And one of the things that comes up is it is not supposed to touch the barrel. You've got a little lip here at the front that plugs into the rear, what's called the lower barrel band, and then you've got the rear handguard band, and it's supposed to touch the two bands. It's supposed to essentially kind of be floating above the barrel, because if it's in contact, say, with the front of the receiver here at the back, and as it heats up and expands, it can push the lower barrel band forward, which can put some weird vibrations and energy into the barrel that it's not supposed to have. So I look inside here, and the reason that the band won't clamp on is because this thing is drawn down hard against the top of the barrel, and there still isn't enough room to get the clip on. So Santa Claus was kind enough. Santa was shopping at Home Depot a couple of weeks ago and noticed that the Dremel 3000 was on sale for the same price that the Dremel 2000 normally costs. And, Santa's not one to pass up a deal. So he got the Dremel 3000, and it was a great tool for hogging out the inside of this handguard to make sure that it was not resting on top of the barrel when it's clamped in there. And then, of course, the other issue was removing this barrel band, and it needs a special tool. And of course, Santa, being knowing, he knew that I needed that tool, and Santa shops at Brownells, so he got the barrel band tool. And I was actually sick a couple of weeks ago. I spent the day at home in bed watching Band of Brothers, and there's a couple. Of course, every episode they're shooting their M1 rifles, and I'm thinking, I've got an M1 out in the safe that doesn't work, And so, if Santa would just bring me the rear handguard band tool, I could possibly fix my rifle. So how the band tool works is, here's the band that clips the handguard onto the barrel, and you just use this special little tool here to spread the band open like this, and then release it back on when you've got it fitted onto the handguard, and then just press it into place. So using my tool and my Dremel, I relieved all of the areas on this part that are not supposed to touch. So I shortened the back so it doesn't touch the receiver. I relieved it here so it doesn't rub on the op rod. It's also not supposed to touch the stock. So I assembled the rifle, reassembled the rifle, laid the handguard on there, and using this as just kind of like a little shim here, I was running it along the edge between the handguard and the stock, checking for the necessary gap that's supposed to be there. So I had to remove some more material here at the front of the handguard. And then there's a place on the stock where, it's rumored that the barrel is likely to rub. And of course, the barrel's not supposed to touch the stock. So I removed a little bit of material right here, just made a little bevel on either side, so that the barrel doesn't rub there on the stock. And it's just kind of amazing to me that all these little detail areas that I was examining, this is where the op rod was rubbing here, and so I relieved a little material there. And I think I've got all the material relieved that needs to be relieved, and then all I have to do is put it back together. But it was just amazing to me how much of this detail fitting has to be done. And there's a lot of information on the internet. I actually found this fitting guide for if you have an oversized Boyd stock. Here's all the fitting steps for where to look for the binding and whatnot. And now, of course, because I had to refinish the handguard, I'll probably end up refinishing the whole stock. It turned out pretty nice. I think it's a little bit lighter than the stock finish that's on the stock, because it was stained kind of a medium brown color, and the bare wood is just a little bit lighter, but I think it turned out pretty nice. Got a couple of coats of tung oil on there, and it looks pretty good. So we'll clamp that bad boy on there and get out to the range and see if it works. But that's what Santa brought me. Everybody, you want to find that gun-related stuff under the tree. Santa was kind enough to bring me the new Dremel and the new rear handguard band pliers. So once I get the thing back together, assuming it works, I'll report back. But so that was my little Christmas endeavor, was to get the M1 Garand back into action. And if it doesn't run, one of the reasons I bought the rifle, the commercial Springfield rifles that they were selling, I just differentiate between the U.S. Arsenal and the Springfield Armory Company that's in business today by calling them the commercial rifle. But the commercial Springfield rifles cost about double what the CMP surplus rifles cost. If you go through the CMP and order your, I think they call it a field grade Springfield made, or I think Winchesters are more, but your kind of field grade, rack grade, whatever you call it, M1 Garand, it costs about half what those commercial rifles cost. But the nice thing about the commercial rifle is it's new, or at least supposed to be built from within spec GI parts, but it comes with a warranty. So I called Springfield last week and said, I'm having this short stroking issue. I bought the rifle in 2002, but it's probably only got 500 or 600 rounds through it. Are you still servicing the rifles? They said, sure, just give us the serial number and, send it in, and we'll fix it if it needs fixing. So I'm making my one little stab here at doing the relieving on the stock, and if it doesn't run to perfection, I'll just send it back to Illinois and let Springfield deal with it. So anyway, Merry Christmas. Hope you got some good gun stuff. There's my little Christmas gun story. Okay, Power Factor fans, trivia question. This is an IDPA rules question. If you're shooting on a cold range, and you're either the shooter or the safety officer, and you as the shooter come to the line, and on the load and make ready command, it's discovered that you have a magazine in your gun, have you violated any rules? And if so, what's the punishment? Second part of the question is there any difference in the punishment or the rules violation if the magazine is loaded or the magazine is empty? Send your questions in to powerfactorshow@gmail.com.